Hey guys, I'm still Gaspartian. We are still doing this. What we are doing this time is more advanced contracts. We are not just going to fly, we're going to fly out of the atmosphere. And going down, we have to think, well, we have to think if we can do anything else going up or going down. This is not going to happen. We're going to stage off... yeah, spoilers, we're going to use a hammer first stage and then a flea second stage. It's going to be basically the rocket we used last time, stacked on top of another solid booster. So we're going to stage off the first booster. Before that, we're going to not reach 130 kilometers with our second stage, but we will need to recover the capsule, so that seems... might as well do it at that altitude, I figure. Anyways, this will require some redesigns of our previous craft, which was the... it wasn't the skyscraper, that's for sure, you haven't seen that yet. It was the liftoff, okay. Which had like no staging. I always talked about static stability. With this attached, this will tend to go nose down. This is very sleek and aerodynamic at the moment, which is the way we want it going up. But when we go down, that's a very big problem, because we won't be able to deploy our parachute in time, and our poor Kerbals will die. How do I know that? What did we say about no reverts? Anyways, we're going to apply a decoupler so that we can safely recover this craft going down vertically. And let's make sure our staging is correct. We're going to decouple that, and then we want to do that at a specific altitude. We want to activate this between 2 and 9 kilometers at those speeds. Also, we sort of care about funds in this game. I'm not sure how funds actually work in this game with the new launch sites, because we're going to launch from a different launch site to get more data. But let's bring ourselves some more science, and let's make sure to recover it by attaching it to the capsule. So I think those are... yeah, those are perfectly spaced. Also, we're going to unlock our newly unlocked experiments, that we're actually going to purchase them. Same principle applies here as with mystery goo units. These cost a lot, so only bring them along when you actually plan to go into different biomes. So we'll do the same thing here, because these, while physicsless, still apply drag, and they apply more drag if they are not aligned with your prograde vector in an atmosphere. So we do that. We are in absolute offset. If you look there, look how the green arrow there, our y-axis, I suppose, or is it our z-axis? That's dependent on your frame of reference. Is slightly angled, so that's not perfect. So if we take this into absolute rotation and then check, now they're perfectly angled. So that's a little tip for you who try to min-max this as much as I do. Absolute rotation keeps your angles straight. And then you can do the Pythagorean theorem on them and whatever else you want to do with straight angles. And we know for a fact that this rocket will not leave the atmosphere, so we're going to stage it. And here we have two options. We can either add a stack of these, costing a lot of funds, and then this costing 1200 on its own. But since this, for a total of 400 plus the unlock cost of 1200, which comes out to 1600, I know math. Since this will be fine enough, we are going to save a little bit of money doing that. So like we recover our unlock cost of 1200 using this once instead of using this plus a stack of fuel, because this has a one-time cost of 3500. We're going to pay for that sometime, but it's already costing 1200 to use it, and then you need fuel on top of that, right? So that's another 150 per fuel stack, and we will probably use like 5 or 6 of these to exit the atmosphere. So that's a lot of money. Or you could use this even once. It pays for itself in its unlock cost. And also, we're not sure we ever want to unlock that fuel tank. I mean, it's small, it's tiny, it's not the way it's balanced. The bigger the fuel tank, the lower the dry cost, so to say. I mean, this cost includes the liquid fuel and oxidizer, which costs like a bit, and then on top of that you're paying some static cost, and the static cost is lower the bigger the tank is. So you want the biggest tanks available, not just because it keeps your part count down, but also because of that it saves your money. Little tidbit worth knowing. So last time we also, let's make sure our staging is still same. Last time we also cared a lot about these TWR values, right? So now, having filled this with solid fuel, added a few more components to our craft, all of those calculations will be off. So let's just hand wave it this time. We know that, well, not hand wave, let's approximate. We know that our mass is about 2.5, 2.6 tons. We know our thrust was ideally 192. The way this interpolates is when your atmospheric pressure is at 1 atmosphere, this is the value you get. If it is at 0 atmospheres, this is the value you get. And then it's linear from that value to that value based on your atmospheric pressure. Now the atmospheric pressure doesn't vary linearly as you go up, but that's another story entirely. We can actually examine that going up and see how that correlates with thrust levels. Anyways, we will forget to do that. Anyways, we had set this for it to be a TWR of 2. Once we fire this, now we will be way out of the atmosphere, so it will be fine if we have an even higher TWR. Means less gravity losses during ascent, so we go higher if we have a higher TWR. Now too high and it's just wasted due to atmospheric drag, and the function for that is complicated, so that's not something we're going to touch. We will mostly concern ourselves with liftoff TWR. Like later on when we design upper stages, we'll talk about dry masses, and that will factor into your desired TWR, but that's another story. So for now, let's aim for a TWR of 3. We are going to assume the baseline ASL value, because we will be positively surprised when we get better than that. And that's 162. We weighed that, which comes out to 26 kilonewtons. That means 162. That's roughly a TWR of 6 if we had it at 100%. So let's say set it at 50, so we get a TWR of about 3. So you can do it fast in your head like that, and that will be perfectly fine for most applications. I only really do it the intricate hardline absolute way for the science I know I will reuse and I really want to optimize. So we can do the same thing here, about 200 kilonewtons at the pad, weighing 6.25 tons. So our weight is going to be about a third of our thrust. I mean, a bit less. So our initial TWR is about 3. We probably want it at slightly less than 2, so we'll set it not at 66%, which will net us a TWR of 2, but maybe at 60. And that should reduce our atmospheric losses, our atmospheric drag losses, which we have already reduced by doing this angling of our parts. But it will also keep our gravity losses from being too high. Like if we set it to like 38, we will still take off, but very slowly, and we won't get as high in the end as if we set it to 60. Then, all that talk about static stability and how it's bad, that only really applies when you're trying to steer. So, since we're going straight up, let's just add some fins for the sake of it. And what I will do, however, is add them pretty close to our center of mass. So as long as that is slightly behind, you can see how it's slightly behind the center of mass when it actually shows up. It's interesting how it just disappears behind that for some reason. We will be statically stable, but it will still afford us some level of control, since we probably want to lever off the launch pad somewhat, so we actually come down in a different biome and can do a little bit more science. So that's great. This is of course the skyscraper, as you already saw. I have not seen a tall building on Kerbin except for the VAB. So they probably only know skyscrapers as things that actually scrape the sky, like rockets. Anyways, we had set up our TWR. The only thing is to action group these new ones. We will put them in the same action group as the crew report, and then we can launch and do our thing. And let's vary our roster a bit. Send out everyone, be happy, and do stuff. We keep on using pilots, of course, because once we ditch that first stage, we are now no longer statically stable. Not that we were on the initial design either, but if you're not statically stable, you probably want SAS, because it has a shorter reaction time than you or I or anyone. And we forgot to launch from a different pad. That's okay. That means we get double samples from space and from flying high. That works out for me. And yeah, I suppose we sample while flying high for the resettable experiments, because we can't actually reset them right now. This pod has a function to pull in all science experiments into its science container, but for some reason it's locked in the carrier right now, and I'm not sure which tech actually unlocks it, so we'll deal with that later. Anyway, 3 to 1 launch, and notice how our TWR seems to be pretty much 2. Pretty much very good. I mean, we aimed for a slightly less than 2, it appears to be a slightly less than 2. We're all set and fine to go to space today. And we did double testing, double sampling, I should say, of the Mr. Goo while flying low. So if we try to do it right now, we can just review that. 0.2 science, that's not worth our time. Now, notice it's closed again. So let's remember to use that first, because that will be delayed while the others will be instantaneous. I almost forgot to stage there. I love these new plumes. That's great. I love them. And now it's time to sample a lot of stuff, because we're over 18 kilometers. We do our 3 resettable ones, but we won't actually reset them. We'll do that one, because that takes a lot of time. Notice how the other one is instantaneous. Boop, science. And then we cruise to Apoaps, which should be, if my calculations are correct, outside of the atmosphere. So that's neat. We will fulfill that contract, that's for sure. There's, like, if we didn't want to fulfill that contract at this point, there's literally nothing we can do, because we're just gonna end up there. The other contract, however, we will be mindful to stage that at the right altitude and not panic, like I have done previously. What we can do is stage already, of course, because that will net us a bit more altitude and give us a bit more of a longer duration in space. I guess we got like 3 meters or something from that. That's great. So 70 kilometers, and a slight little jump there as we escaped the atmosphere and the physics engine did some adjustments. Anyways, we won't do the resettable instruments right now because we have no way to reset them. We can't EVA because we need to upgrade the astronaut complex. Instead, we will run this twice and never have to worry about it again, because next time we run it we will get like 0.4 science, and that's not worth our time. So instead we have reached our apoapse, and we're coming down, and we're coming down over grasslands this time. So that's new science. That's great. Should have saved Mr. Goo for that. But this is a higher short-term payoff, and we will land in the grasslands again, I promise you. Coming down, straight down. This time we only have the pod, so we have our center mass down here, roughly. We are statically stable. And I can prove that by disengaging SAS and remaining locked to our retrograde marker. So now we should survive. Had we had the booster attached, we would be statically stable in the other direction, and we would be going way faster. So what we can do here is angle a bit to increase drag, because remember, we need to slow down to 250 meters per second. Now all those are fulfilled, and we can get that contract fulfilled. Yay! So that's great. More science for us, less science for everyone else. I'm sure that's how it works. This has been the second launch. We reviewed some of the lessons learned in the past episode. We took some shortcuts, and we talked more about general things. This series will be sped up a bit from now on. Until now we have done this entirely live. As you know, that's not my preferred way of doing things, but I feel like I had enough to talk about these two episodes to keep it that way, and then we will do the whole make every episode take 4 hours to edit type thing that we did with 64K. Except maybe not that extreme, because then you will not see any content, and I want to give you content. I've been Gaspatchi, and I hope you enjoyed this series. I'll see you sooner rather than later.